We're going to talk today about active shooters. It's been almost 20 years ago now, be 20 years next year, when Columbine, the incident out there occurred. So what Columbine did for us in law enforcement, it was kind of the end of innocence as far as our school systems go. There were obviously incidents before that, but that incident in particular kind of opened up our eyes, particularly in law enforcement, of how we respond to an active shooter incident. And it also opened up the eyes of the schools about how they're going to make preparations for such incident. 4 things that we can do, or that I think are core points as far as school assailant incidents. 1 is preparation, be prepared. 2 is be prepared. 3 is be prepared. Does anybody know what 4 is? It's not be prepared. It kind of is. It's be prepared to change that preparation if you need to in the moment. Because every incident, I can guarantee you, is not the same. Every incident, and we'll kind of breeze over the statistics, but every incident is going to be different, going to be chaotic. So be able to think in the moment and to do what you think is best at that moment. Because I guarantee you, you'll be judged on those decisions later, but you have to do what's best at the time. I'm going to quickly go over a few statistics. Before I do that, just ask a few questions. You guys are all school administrators here. Do you use, what kind of program do you use? Do you guys all use the ALICE program, or are there other programs that you guys use as far as training? I'm assuming everyone does some type of training. Is there anybody who doesn't within your school? Okay. Is it the ALICE program that you guys use, or does anybody know? What's that? Run, hide, fight. Exactly. That's the core concepts of the ALICE program. In fact, we'll just skip to those real quick because I have to include this because I promised my daughter I would. So this is what you get when you have a daughter who's 9 years old and who helps you to do your, yeah, exactly. So yeah, as far as the ALICE training program, the 3 core concepts are run, hide, fight. I call them evacuate, shelter, and combat. So we won't go into those in too much detail, but I promised I would talk about these a little bit. Wow. Or at least show these slides. So we'll back up here a bit. So I'm not going to go through all these statistics either. Just like I said, I'm trying to compress this into a short amount of time. The basic point of these statistics are, 1, let me go the right direction here. So this is just between 2000 and 2017. FBI statistics and what they identified as active shooter incidents in the United States. These are incidents that met their criteria as far as active shooter. Debatable whether there's, debatable whether there's more. I think you could probably debate that there have been more, but this is what they identified. Regardless, the numbers are extremely high. 799 fatalities and 1,400 plus casualties. It's an extreme amount of people who were killed or wounded from assailants in this type of incident. Now, not all of these are within our education environment. They are across the board. 21% of those were in the education environment. So obviously a smaller number, but the point being is this is an issue that's come to the forefront. I wouldn't be standing up here today. You guys wouldn't have ALICE training and that type of stuff within your schools if it wasn't something that's basically come to the forefront, especially since 1999 when we had Columbine. There are a couple other quick statistics or quick notes about the statistics, and one of the reasons behind the run, hide, fight concept with ALICE is between 2000 and 2013, the FBI also did another study on these type of incidents, and they came to the conclusion that there were only 2 of those incidents that involved multiple assailants. Those 2 actually, one was in Oklahoma, it was in an open air environment, the other one was in a house in New York, where multiple assailants started attacking the people inside the house. None of them was in schools. There was obviously Columbine, and then San Bernardino in 2015. Those both have multiple assailants. So there have been a few more, but between that time period, there's only been 2. So that's one of the reasons they promote the evacuate if possible scenario when we talk about the run, hide, fight concept. Just want to throw a statistic out there because that's what they base that on. Just kind of playing the odds, and obviously you have to think in the moment. I got this thing going the wrong way. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do, since I'm limited on time, is I'm just going to go over a few points. This is kind of a small checklist. There's other ones out there. There's a lot of topics you could touch on. I'm just going to go over a few. And I'm going to, for a couple reasons, I'm going to talk a little bit about, and I asked Reva ahead of time if I could mention her name, Good Shepherd School and Reva in particular. And the reasons I do that are twofold. One, my daughter goes there, so I have a personal interest. Second reason being is, in my mind, Reva and the school board have taken enormous steps in the last 6 to 8 months to try to make their facility less susceptible, I guess, in a variety of ways, and I'll explain some of those as we go along. One of the key points, I think, and I think you mentioned it a little bit, is controlling your entry points, controlling your access points. I know every school is different, every school has different setups. But if you can funnel your activity, especially in the mornings, when the kids are coming into school, parents are coming in, bringing them in, if you can funnel those kids into one entrance, if that's possible, obviously sometimes it's not, but if you can do that and keep it where it can be monitored at that one point, that's probably optimal. If not, you know, there's a use of security guards. Not everybody can afford that. I know there's some school liaisons with the police departments, which are also helpful. And if it's financially possible, metal detectors to kind of keep, you know, monitor what's coming in and out of the school. You know, have reception personnel at that area that are trained. If it's a situation where, I know like a Good Shepherd in particular, where they get buzzed in and out from the reception area, that's one way to control that and to monitor that. However, at busy times, obviously there's tailgaters who come in and out when people are coming in and out and they aren't really checked. If you can have personnel there to monitor that, maybe just take one teacher, one staff to just kind of monitor that and be able to recognize a threat, and then, if possible, be able to respond to it if needed. So keep those people who are at that position to monitor, keep them trained and up to date on what to look for. Another thing that we try to preach is a couple times a day, whether it's you or staff or whoever, just kind of walk around your school and patrol your school and check out the perimeter, check out the doors. You know, there's secondary entrances, make sure those are locked. And there's also maintenance type entrances, kitchen entrances. A lot of times it's hot, or maintenance may be doing some work, taking stuff in and out. They'll prop those doors open. A lot of times these people who are assailants in these instances, they kind of scope stuff out. Some of them know what they're doing. They planned this for a while. Some of them haven't, but a lot of them have. So if they know that the maintenance guy props open the door every day, that's easy access. Try to keep those things closed. Try to keep them, you know, secure if you can. They'll catch on. Your maintenance or kitchen people will catch on after a while if you let them know that, you know, this is the reason and it needs to be closed. So just monitor and kind of be aware of what's happening as far as the access to your schools. Lock the classroom doors, and again, when I talk about a lot of these, make sure that you're keeping in contact with your fire department and sometimes with your police department too, to make sure they're all on board, especially your fire department, to make sure everything's up to code. I know Reva in particular worked with Beacon Fire Department on a lot of the changes that were made to Good Shepherd. But you know, if you have door locks, you know, and you have the ability to keep your doors locked during the day, during class time, yeah, that's a good idea. Reva and the school board had deadbolts also placed on the doors as a secondary lock. One just in case the door lock failed or the handle lock failed, and just as a secondary mechanism. What she did there too is you need to make these locks as easy as they can to manipulate, because in an instance like this, you're going to have extreme loss of motor skills, it's going to be hard to get that lock to go into place where you want it to go. So make it easy for the staff to be able to lock the door, but if you can, try to have a secondary lock on your door to be able to secure that, to give you time to evacuate, or if you have to shelter in there, to be able to keep somebody out for as long as possible. Security film for large windows, again, something that Good Shepherd ended up doing. The security film that they have is not bulletproof. A bullet will go through it pretty much with the same velocity that it went through just the glass itself. The difference is it goes through and leaves a hole as opposed to shattering the entire window. So it just makes it more difficult for the assailant to be able to shoot the window once, it breaks, and just walk through. You would actually literally have to beat it out with whatever. So it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to give somebody time to respond and deal with whatever they can as far as the situation goes, or give time to evacuate if that's the case. Have some form of communication, and I don't know, does anybody use some of the apps that are out there? Like Sabriva, I know they're looking into and beginning to use Crisis Go. Are there others that are, I'm not a salesman for Crisis Go, so are there some that anybody recommends as far as communication apps within that you're using at your schools?
We use one called GroupMe.
Okay. Have you had use of that yet, or
yeah.
I mean, not an actual incident, but
right in
okay.
practice.
Okay, good. Is it pretty effective?
Yeah, it's just a closed list of who's in the group, which is all our faculty and staff.
Sure.
Make announcements like all clear.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's a way, one, to be able to communicate with your teachers, to hold, find out who's okay, who's not okay, where they're at. You know, just to be able to communicate, because it's going to be a big issue. It's going to be chaotic. So, excuse me, be aware of potential issues such as employee terminations, threats, custody disputes, bullying, you know, other issues with the children, that type of stuff. Those have played a factor into some of these incidents as well. You know, I know there's sensitive issues around maybe some of these, but if you can be informatively vague, I guess, with your staff, and at least kind of let them know, maybe not extreme details, but at least let them know that there's an issue. You know, as much information as you can get out is better. All those, you know, are potential reasons for people to come in and want to cause harm. Conduct training, it sounds like all of you do. I'm assuming some of that's mandated, but if you can do just additional training on your own, it's going to be helpful. I used to I worked with K9 and as a tactical operator on the regional TAC team for several years. And we train, and I mean, we had a couple critical incidents we were involved in, and you do, when things turn chaotic, you go back to your training. So if you can get your teachers, if it's just even, you know, if you do set up some type of secondary lock on your doors, just have them, something as simple as manipulate it a few different times a week or something like that. Just have them be able to do that, so when stuff starts to get chaotic, they have that muscle memory and they just go right back to it, and they can lock it pretty easily. Because it's not, I'm telling you, I've been in situations like that and things start to fail. So the more they can train, and the more they can just do simple stuff like that, and muscle memory, it's gonna help them out in the end. Set up an anonymous tip method if you can. A lot of this information, people don't necessarily want to get involved. They might know of something in the community, they might know of a situation, but they don't actually want to come out and say anything and put their name on it. So if you can give them an avenue to pass information along to you, along to the police, then we can maybe get some information that we wouldn't necessarily get otherwise. I'm sure you guys assess and review your policies periodically, just keeping up to date. Things change. Columbine, we waited for tactical operators to show up before we went into school. And I say we, I mean law enforcement, but things changed, it's evolved. After that, we started a program called Rapid Deployment. Now it's active shooter. but it's just an evolution of how we respond to it, and you guys as school administrators need to just review and maybe evolve too on how you train and respond to the same type of situation. Report everything, because I know see something, say something rule. Obviously that doesn't always work. There are times it fails, different reasons, but it's still the best way to get the information out there, get the information to the police, and at least somebody's aware of it. Somebody can try to investigate it. Hopefully it gets investigated, and hopefully it stops some type of incident before it actually occurs. I can guarantee you a few things. Let me check my time here, sorry. I can guarantee you a few things. It's going to be chaotic if it ever happens, and God forbid it does. But I think we all have to go in with the mindset that it could happen, because I think if you ask every administrator who's been involved in one of these incidents, I think they all probably didn't think that it was going to necessarily happen, that it would happen somewhere else. But if it does, it's going to be chaotic. Like I said before, your plans are going to fail, and you will be judged for the decisions you make. And there's going to be a lot of decisions to be made. But if you're prepared and better prepared and able to make those decisions in the moment, then you're going to be better off in the end. Like I said before, not to go over that again, but plan ahead and then be able to think in the moment. Sometimes I give these, I like to talk about a guy. Anybody ever heard the name of Rick Squirrela? Okay. And on September 11th in 2001, obviously, we don't need to go over that story, but after the first plane hit the World Trade Center, Rick Squirrela was in Tower 2, the second tower to get hit, and he was a security officer from Morgan Stanley that morning. And the administrators of the second tower, not knowing exactly what was going on, because it was chaotic, told everybody to shelter in place. They made orders over the intercom to stay at your desk, to stay in your office. Rick Squirrela, who, like I said, was working that morning just as a security guard for one of the companies, picked up a bullhorn and started ordering people out of the building. Made several trips in and out of the building, escorted, estimates say, around 2,600 people that he probably saved that morning. So had he gone with the plan and not thought in the moment, and he was prepared, that was his job, he was prepared, he was former military, but he was also able to think at that moment, we need to get out of here. So it's a story, but on a grander scale, but it's still, point is just be able to think about what's going on at that very second. Obviously, if you would have an incident where there were multiple assailants and one was outside, obviously you're not going to be able to evacuate. So just the first point of Alice is to run, to get out, but maybe that's not an option on every occasion. So just be able to think about that. Mr. Squirrela died that morning too, going back in to save some more people. Just to finish that story. Go over those. Anybody have any questions? I know I'm about out of time, so. Okay. One question.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
In your
same question, but go ahead.
Yeah, in your experience with just this area, obviously you're in Tazewell County, what do you feel the schools? I'm not trying to put anybody out there, but do you feel they're prepared? And do you think from a training standpoint and?
Okay, so my job now, I look at digital forensics, and which is really boring, and I portray a 13-year-old named Lily online. So if anybody's ever talking to a 13-year-old named Lily, probably get off. It's probably me. So my point is I don't go around to the schools in that capacity to look at them, but I do talk to those guys, and they help me with talking to Reva at Good Shepherd, and they told me that the steps that Good Shepherd had made, and I'll go over a couple quick more of those if I have about 2-3 minutes left. They told me that Good Shepherd, with what she's done in the last 6 months, is head and shoulders above what they've seen at the other schools. Just those few, I say minor, but few, when I mean minor, I mean the cost. There was cost, but it wasn't overly significant. There was just minor steps that definitely made a huge difference as far as what other schools were at. I don't know that personally. I'm just going off of what the two guys who do go around to the other schools have told me. So some of the things, if I can embarrass Reaver for a minute too. One of the, I have to remember all of them, I've jotted a few of them down here. I know she's had, this is the Pekin Police Department, was that shirt come in with the training for tourniquet training. There's debate on that issue too, and if anybody wants any information on it, I'll put them in touch with a guy who's a ER doctor who's assigned to our TAC team in the area who teaches this type of response and medical care. He's written numerous books on tactical medicine and the use of tourniquets. So she's had them come in and teach their staff about using tourniquets if they were needed. So hold on. I know also she's consulted with the security company who operates their camera system and given our communication center access to the cameras within the school. So not on a regular basis, but in a critical incident, our communication center would be able to remotely view those cameras, log into a URL, and be able to tell the police live, real time, what's going on inside the school. So reason being, when we had Columbine, we had a TAC team go in. You have your own cameras, your robots, that kind of stuff. You can see what's going on. But now, the way we do it is the first officer there goes in. So whoever shows up goes in. So you're going in blind. You don't have any idea. But as long as they have communication with or connection with the communication center, they can be able to basically have eyes on and be able to tell what's going on, how many assailants, where they're at, what's a good area, what's a safe area, what's not. The other thing is she's made it so any officer responding to that school and being the first one to go in would have the ability to go in. So you guys keep your door locked. If I show up, I don't have a key necessarily. And the thing about Good Shepherd and a lot of the schools, especially in Pekin, being the county seat, there's at any given moment, there's county, there's state, there's city, there's smaller cities, there's some federal agencies, people coming up and down, federal state's attorney investigators. There's people coming up and down Route 9 specifically all the time. So any officer who heard the call would be able to respond, but wouldn't have a way in necessarily because they all don't have the key. So they made the ability for anybody who can call our dispatch center to be able to get the access code to get into the building immediately. So just another way, because if you got officers who are standing outside, can't get through the door, it doesn't do a lot of good. Good Shepherd's doors have metal bars that would prevent somebody from just being able to walk through. And obviously they've also used the security film, which prevents a bad guy from getting in, but would also prevent a good guy from getting in. So just another thought, how if somebody responds, how are they going to get into your building?
So Todd, on that, so that they, on the video access and the key code access, they would contact
It would both be
county,
through.
or they're just a local, the county or the.
Yeah, it would be as easy as, so if I'm a lot of the departments have our dispatch center in their radios, so they might have contact through that method. If not, it would be as simple as dialing 911 and you ring into our dispatch center and they can tell you, yes, this is a code to the door, and as long as you're on the phone with them, they could give you eyes on as far as the cameras go too. So just all you would need was communication with the dispatch center. So one question I think you had asked when I talked to you, was it you about the off-duty? Mm-hmm. Okay. One question, I'm going to ask my own question, which is probably odd, but Pat had asked about, I don't even, he didn't even say who asked, but there was a question about off-duty officers, and I think the question was being hired as basically employees or teachers within the school.
Substitute teacher or
yes,
be able to carry.
And their ability to be able to carry. So I'm not an expert on that. my inclination, and I read the law, was that it was, that you could carry a weapon inside the school. So I consulted the guy who is the director of the MTU, but ICC. What that means is he's basically in charge of the entire region as far as police training. And his answer to me was absolutely. He said, if you, as a school, hire a former officer, off-duty officer who's retired, as long as he's got his ability to carry under that retired officer qualification course, that he hasn't failed it, as long as he has the ability to carry under that, it reverts to federal law. And under federal law, he said absolutely that you could be employed as a teacher inside of a school as an off-duty former officer and be able to carry. He and I can put anybody in contact who'd like to talk to him. He's much more knowledgeable on it than I am. You know, he said obviously, you know, the school board would probably want to approve that as far as that individual, but he's referencing state law, and as far as state law goes, it would revert to the federal law, which he, in his opinion, overrules it, and you would be able to carry inside that situation. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, Pat.
Thanks, Matt. Great job.